So at this point in time, I would like to turn over to start our next session, my co-founder and partner in Black Squirrel, Jim Burnett. Jim, it's showtime.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Naja. To start to have this conversation around Black developers in particular, but access to real estate and the resources that are necessary in order to make it work. Really excited to have Jeremy Sunkett here as a representative from the Urban Land Institute, and also Laura, who's trying to get in. So that technology is always a little bit of a challenge, and so I'm sure she'll work it out in a few minutes. And then Angel Rodriguez from PHDC to try to tell you a little bit more about some initiatives from two organizations that have had some challenges working in particular with African Americans in the past, but are doing some really wonderful things to make it work. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to let Jeremy introduce himself. And then I'm gonna try to shoot something to Laura to see if she can get in. So thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I can take a shot at the ULI overview if Laura isn't able to get on. I won't do it as well as she can, but hopefully we'll get that resolved.
As I was saying, I'm here as a representative of ULI Philadelphia. I am co-chairing the ULI Philadelphia Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisors Group, long title. But my day job is I'm vice president of corporate real estate at Elwyn. Have been in the industry in a variety of capacities during the course of my career, starting out in the economic development world and then moving over to the real estate space. So bring all of that perspective with me into this initiative with ULI, which is really focused on doing everything that we can as ULI, as an industry association, excuse me, to bring diversity, equity, and inclusion into every conversation that we're having. We are not a development entity. We're not out there doing the projects, doing the work, but we are a very influential, force in the industry, I would say, as a thought leader, as a convener, and as a facilitator. And there's a tremendous amount of, intellectual capital, relationship capital that we're trying to bring to bear to, basically create a more inclusive, commercial real estate industry, starting obviously in this market. ULI is an international organization, but we're clearly focused on the Philadelphia market and this region. So that's what we're doing. I'm happy to get into some more detail about our areas of focus. I'll pause for a moment, Jim, to see if we have Laura with us and maybe can say a little bit more about ULI's mission generally.
I am here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
No, go ahead.
No. I just want to take a second to introduce you. So Laura, it's your show. Thank you.
I am so sorry. I've done so many webinars, but I had a link issue. So I apologize to everyone for being.
Laura Slutsky. I'm the executive director of ULI Philadelphia. Jeremy gave us a great intro, so I can be pretty brief, but the Urban Land Institute is a global nonprofit organization. We have two main pieces. One is that we are a membership organization. So we have a broad membership, 45,000 people globally and about 900 in the Philadelphia area. And our members are interdisciplinary. So many of the folks on this call, Jim, anyone that really works in and around the real estate land use planning and development field and has an interest in, advancing best practices, building stronger communities, et cetera. And then we have a mission side. So our mission is about shaping the future of the built environment for impact in communities worldwide. So here at the local level, everything that we do is through our members. That's kind of a key piece. Everyone's participating on a volunteer basis. I have a very tiny team, and then we kind of run the operations and also coordinate nationally. We do a lot of programming around the mission, educational work, convening, tours, panel discussions, et cetera. We work in partnership with the public and nonprofit sectors around addressing land use questions and challenges. We have like a mini consulting program we call advisory services. We do training programs, we work on policy issues, so a whole host of activities. And we're really happy to be listening to this group and meeting you all and part of conversations to really broaden the voices at the table at ULI. Jeremy touched on this and Jim touched on this, but with this work started sort of in earnest in the fall of 2019, and of course was very accelerated with good reason last summer. So we've done more dedicated work to really chip away at the uphill battle that our organization has to climb on the diversity side, but also in thinking about how we have a responsibility as a land use organization, and that real estate practices were part of creating the systemic racism and the disproportionate impacts of communities today, so that we have this responsibility to educate people about what that is, what we can do about it, and then also think about training, just having more voices at the table to be a more inclusive and equitable organization that's more representative of our community, and having the conversations we need to have. We're really a convener, so bringing all the people to the table and hashing it through. I think I'll just stop there because I'm excited to hear from folks and answer questions, but thank you, Jim. I apologize again for the delay.
No,
Nice
these are
to see
things
you.
that actually happen all the time, unfortunately, in this world of Zoom that we're in. So we totally understand. And so let me kind of try to reset the conversation. And we really are focused on, in particular, Black Americans. And they've been prevented, deterred, dissuaded from owning property, whether by deed restrictions, zoning, government policy, or industry practice. Blacks have had to fight to own land that, quite frankly, they've been entitled to. And at present, many of the overt policies have been made illegal. Unfortunately, practice of discrimination has continued. And so one of the good things is there is always opportunity for change. And I think that we're in the midst of change. And so I want to welcome our third panelist, Angel Rodriguez from Philadelphia Housing, PHDC, Philadelphia Housing and Development Corporation, and the Landbank to the conversation. And Angel, if you could just give us a brief introduction of yourself and also of PHDC.
Certainly. Again, I apologize. I didn't know I was going to have to go through a really big survey and to get in, but I'm really happy to be here. Apologize for my lateness. My name is Angel Rodriguez. I am the Senior Vice President at PHDC for Land Management. I have several other titles. I'm the Executive Director of the Landbank and also Deputy Executive Director of the PRA. With these titles, pretty much I manage, also work with the Commissioner of Public Property. I'm responsible for the management of about 6,500 city-owned properties, vacant surplus properties, and working on the disposition of those properties either for affordable housing, community investment like gardens, side yards, mixed income development, you name it, we pretty much do it. I also am in charge of design and construction and the property management of all these properties. So having said all that, PHDC, this is only a small portion of what PHDC does. So the way I like to describe PHDC is that PHDC is really the city's nonprofit. So PHDC handles a lot of quality of life issues. So we handle land issues, quality of life in your home. So that could be weatherization, basic systems repair, helping people with LIHEAP. Right now we're doing rental assistance, small landlord programming. We do, we have an accelerator fund that we initiated. You name it, we're trying to fill the gaps as it relates to real property and people's quality of life in that situation. I guess to the question that I know that you had on the agenda, the one thing I wanted to talk about is that PHDC has just recently launched a new RFQ targeting minority Black and Brown developers in the city of Philadelphia. The idea being that, as Jim was talking about, the historical impact of the exclusionary nature of things, where, you know, regulations are so high or hurdles are so you know, complicated for startup businesses or Black and Brown businesses to go. There hasn't been an equitable distribution of contract opportunities for minority developers to get contracts and grow wealth, and then to share that wealth in the community. So both Dave Thomas and myself have been working in Philadelphia in affordable housing for a very long time. And Dave is very passionate about this and wanted to initiate this program. Our goal is to get a cadre of minority developers and train them on how to do business with the city. So just a little bit of my background and how I met Jim Burnett. I used to do small business development. Honestly, I used to tell small business owners, don't contract with the city. Why? Because it took too long. And you probably, you know, on a cash flow basis, it would just hurt your business. Our focus is to actually change that, to do a very high touch program, really help people understand how, you know, the complicated technical compliance piece of applying for a publicly held piece of land, and then work with you on how to really navigate all the pitfalls. A lot of this is just experience that's been, you know, we've acquired over years of problem solving. And what we're hoping to do in this program is develop relationships with new, you know, young developers and established developers, and really kind of build the bench of who's going to come out and develop in these at-risk neighborhoods. And I used to run Youthville, Philadelphia many, many years ago. The impact of seeing people that represent the communities that are at risk going in there and rehabbing the building has, you know, intangible benefits to the young people, the residents there, and people who've already invested and been living in these neighborhoods, to see that, to have that object lesson. So that's our goal, is to really help people on the technical side, establish those relationships, really to do a little bit of hand-holding through those anxiety-ridden portions where you have to sign that check and you know you're at risk, and help you get to the other side, and really become a better partner with people. And we know what our shortcomings are. We're highly technical, highly regulated, and, you know, I own the fact that sometimes we're not really as quick to respond to certain questions. And we're trying to address that in these issues. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Angel. It's a great overview of what you guys are doing. Let me just step back to Jeremy. Jeremy, you've been in the business for a while, you know, and you're now a member of ULI. One, you know, as an African-American developer, what were some of the challenges that you've run into in this space? One, getting capital, and even access to properties. And maybe it's just a time matter of maybe not being able to get the capital fast enough so that you can get to some of the properties that you're looking for. But just curious as how your experience has been.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, I'll go back to what I mentioned in the intro, Jim, that, you know, my training, I guess I've come to real estate, commercial real estate, through something of a non-traditional path. I was in the economic development space for a long time, working in organizations that probably look a lot like Angel's, kind of public sector oriented, with a public mission, but, you know, meant to run like a business. So there's this kind of hybrid aspect of it, and you're doing, you're engaging in commercial activity, but a lot of what you're doing, and I did a lot of work in urban areas, some in rural areas. What I realized that we were doing in a lot of cases where there were these interventions that we were undertaking from the public or quasi-public side to make the marketplace function better for these communities that weren't, for whatever reason or for a variety of reasons, naturally attracting the capital, right? Part of this kind of cycle that we're all describing in different ways is that we've created a structure here where the marketplace doesn't necessarily, as it's defined now, doesn't work for some of these communities. That's why it manifests itself in terms of housing demand, not the housing need. People need the housing, but how do you get people into these communities to build it, right? And how do you get people from those communities to not only be involved in building it, but obviously, being able to own the property? And, we had a conversation recently in a forum that Laura and I were both in about the whole food desert, phenomenon. How do you get the, that world of retail, and supermarkets and big box to work for communities? It's not even a question as to whether or not they need the food. I mean, we've observed the problem. Then you run into this marketplace issue. And I guess that's one of the things that got me really interested in kind of switching, sides of the table, because when I was in economic development, as Angel is in a lot of cases, I assume, I was often helping finance commercial real estate projects or infrastructure projects. And I thought, well, I could probably influence this, this space even more if I were on that side of the table. And clearly, along the way, with a lot of interaction with developers and different companies in that space, you notice the lack of representation. So you can either withdraw from that, or you can decide that you want to enter into that space. And, I obviously made a decision to opt in. I found some great mentors, one of whom we were privileged to have speak at one of our kind of the kickoff to our DE&I event, Herman Bulls, who's the vice chairman for JLL, and who's somebody that's just been a great mentor and kind of, just shows you the impact of those kind of relationships, because it set me down this path in this industry. And I just come full circle to, a number of mentoring relationships that I have, not necessarily exclusively with, people of color or Black and brown people, but I've been very intentional about that to try to open up that door, because, as you said, Jim, it's about access to opportunity, access to capital, and access to, wealth ultimately. And this commercial real estate industry generates about $1 trillion in GDP for the United States, billions of dollars in economic output in terms of salaries and other measures of economic activity. And obviously, for groups of people to be on the sidelines and not be able to have access to that industry and to be able to work within it and ascend within it, and not only better themselves personally, but have an opportunity to influence where the investment goes. That was very attractive to me as I was coming up, to be able to be in a position to actually influence some investment decisions and get capital into places that it might not otherwise end up in if I wasn't part of a conversation, or somebody like me with my background and my sensibilities wasn't in the room. So it's really been a fascinating experience. It's been frustrating. Sometimes it's disappointing, because, the marketplace does what it does, but that's why there's a PHDC. That's why there was this alphabet soup of organizations I used to work with, because if we just accept that that's the way the marketplace functions, which was kind of the way this food desert conversation went, then, we're really not having not only economic impact in the truest sense, we're not having social impact.
Yeah, and we also want to make sure that we try to kind of layer that too, right? So that it just doesn't happen. It's similar to the food desert that you're referencing. It just doesn't happen at the top, that, there's contractors and design work and other things where you're looking for people of color to also participate. And Laura, given that ULI has this access to all parts of the industry, how can ULI really push the envelope in terms of engagement and use of these diverse-led organizations?
I mean, that is the question that I think a lot of us, Jeremy, some others on this call, are spending some time thinking about, right? Like our organization has existing tools and programs and networks. And so and has made this commitment not only in Philadelphia, but globally, to elevate and be more deliberate about inclusion and lifting up communities of color. So the question is sort of what's the most beneficial way to do that? And there's been some programming that's already occurred on the educational side, like Jeremy talked about. And actually Jim is involved in a group. We have one of our councils, which is a small group of ULI members that interacts around a topic. And this particular group is around small scale and impact development. And so the questions that we've brainstormed ways, like, can we host some kind of a just convening where we talk about, leveraging and enhancing relationships between minority contractors and other organizations and entities in neighborhoods. But our network also at times, I think, can be, I say this a lot in our group, like an echo chamber, right? So if it's the traditional membership, thankfully it is changing now, but it's not anywhere where it needs to be, and we put out some kind of an event. Are we talking to ourselves, and are we reaching the right communities and voices who can really kind of make those connections with developers who are in the position to hire locally and have the interest and the desire, but there's something missing there. So those are the things we're thinking about. Is it training? Is it a toolbox? Is it, some kind of just like an event when we can be back in person fully, allowing people to interact? Those are all things that we can do through our organization. It's just identifying and we're a member driven. So ensuring that we have the right group of people together, kind of collaborating to make it happen. But we can do all kinds. So I'd love to hear ideas from this group. But the goal is that's the idea, that we want to leverage the platform to do that. And we do have developers that are seeking these relationships and know that they're not doing what they need to do in this space, and that this is a goal. But we also hear people saying, making the statements about why that's the case that may or may not be, once you get on the ground, accurate. So how can we bring groups together? Because that's one of the things that we do as an organization. So I'd love to hear that conversation today.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I forgot to mention in my intro, I come from affordable housing and community development on the public side. So I worked at the national level at HUD and locally a little bit in Philadelphia, but mostly in New York City. And so that was just such a different perspective on these exact issues, right? We had rules we were trying to enforce, and people were just trying to spend our money in a time frame. Angel, so I very much resonate with a lot of what you were talking about. So the different actors want to do the right thing, I think, and it's just about taking the time to get the right people together and actually make it happen on projects where people are always
challenges. Yeah, I think some of those challenges are definitely out there, right? And you and Angel, coming both of you from that experience, I just wanted to take an opportunity. We have about 5-6 minutes left. And we're trying to kind of stay on course for each of the subsequent sessions, but we did have a question in the chat, and I would ask Diplomatic J, if you want to ask your question, please do so. Are you there?
Hello.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Justin.
Go ahead, sir.
All righty. My name is Justin Heidelberg, and I'm from St. Louis. And my question is, how do we make equitable community development equitable at companies or investors' bottom line? Because you all got talking about equity, we talking about investment, but how do we make communities that have been labeled the place where you don't want to do anything in, to make them be the places that everybody wants to live in? So that's it.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for that question. I would also ask if you stick around, because a lot of our sessions after this one address some of those specific issues. But I think part of that is just trying to make sure that, first off, that the community think that there's value in it itself. and then bringing the right resources, and you taking ownership in a lot of cases that this is our community and we actually can have a say in what's going on. So I would just say hang in there. There's a lot of good speakers coming in, but I do want to hop back to our guests here and give them each of them a minute each. Angel, and real quick, if you could actually take a minute or two, just talk about again your program, how people can either get the RFP or learn more about the opportunity to participate.
So so we posted the RFP. It actually closed, RFQ, I should say, actually closed September 30th. We had a very high turnout. We got about 70 applications for this program. So right now we're going through the applications. We're hoping to have the first class identified by the end of the October, and then run them through and afterwards we'll take them to a boot camp. The boot camp will be targeting how to get through the city's application process. What we've also done is identified housing projects. So what makes this a little bit different, as I said earlier, the purpose here is to actually assist minority developers to get a leg up. So it should result in a contract. So we've also identified housing projects. This is ground up housing projects on different levels, whether it's infill, 5 to 10 properties, and some larger scale projects, depending on the pool of applicants that we settle on. They will then have to competitively compete with themselves to apply for these RFPs, and we would be assisting them. We kind of do a forensic deep dive on their applications. So not everybody is going to win the first round. Somebody will be awarded that that RFP, and then everybody else who didn't will go through their application and assist them. This is going to be an iterative process. As I said, we have a lot of land. We do have buy-in from several council people. So this is going to be a process. This program will be 3 years, and each year we'll add on a class. This also will work closely with the bond issuance that the city's issuing. This is a neighborhood preservation initiative. It's $400 million over 10 years. With that, we'll be also assisting the developers in terms of identifying and assisting residents to buy the homes with soft second mortgages and buying points back, so that we can increase the level of affordability in the projects. So that's really the project in a nutshell. There'll be some class time. We're also partnering with ULI to help them with pro formas and how to do financials. We're really focusing on skill set transference and helping people understand how to get this, and then the repetitive nature, so that 3 years they'll be able to go on their own in any market and really know and feel comfortable with their skill sets and ability to carry off or pull off a real estate project.
Thanks. And I know, do you think that any of the offerings that the city is doing, or the PHDC is doing now, could help in St. Louis, similarly to the question that was asked about making equitable community development equitable?
I think there are certain initiatives that we're doing. There are a lot of things that you have to unpack with equitable development. It's sort of like when we used to have the term creative economy. What is that? I still haven't met somebody who could definitively define that. So I think the great thing about the term equitable development is that it's unique to every community. So I think one of the biggest pieces is a feedback loop. Having, like our administration investing, and our agencies investing in listening to residents as to what they want, involving residents into what their vision of, their neighborhood should look like. and they want it to look like, and then really help them problem solve as to how we get there. And I'm sure as many of you here, if you're a seasoned developer, you know, you may have big dreams. It takes a lot to get the shovel in the ground, let alone build the property and then sell the property or lease it up. You're talking a couple of years of investment. Imagine what a community feels when they're living there for 30 years. So I think that what we've done well in Philadelphia is the community engagement in the past, couple of years. When you look at the planning and development and getting those plans done, I think in Philadelphia is unique in that we have a lot of competing interests for the same asset, which is that land. You've got community gardens, you got urban farming, you've got affordable housing, you have other issues, community benefiting uses, and everybody's jockeying for space. So I think one of the key issues, and we're kind of just working that out as we go, is always being able to listen. What's an effective feedback loop? And then how do you handle when people don't get what they're actually looking for? So if you choose one thing, because you only have the one asset, I only have one parcel of land. If we go one route, there are probably 3 or 4 other people who are going to be very unhappy. So how do you keep them engaged? So I think those are the other things that have to happen. And I think we've started that process.
Thanks. And Laura, you mentioned in the chat a program that ULI is running, and I think it ties back into what I was saying about communities having a say in what they're doing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So this program is called Urban Plan. It is a training curriculum developed by ULI members about 20 years ago in California, run all over the country. And I think we have maybe one of our graduates from Urban Plan here, I think, and definitely some volunteers. And essentially it's a interactive curriculum based on a fake development site. And it is very hands-on and very technical, and it sort of engages all the participants of the class in different roles in a very interactive way. That the aim of it, in addition to sort of team building and all kinds of other things, is really to expose folks to different aspects of the development, the land use and development process. It can be delivered to high school students, college students, senior high school level high school students, college students, or communities. And in Philadelphia, we launched this program right before COVID. So we executed it virtually, and now we're coming back actually tomorrow for our first in-person training. But it will be the second training. Oh yeah, there you are, Joyce. Of community leaders who have gone through the Citizens Planning Institute training program, so are looking to get involved in their neighborhood, or members of registered community organizations. And we had an overwhelming response to the first training that we're now doing a second one tomorrow. And so if these continue to be of interest and successful for folks, our goal is to try to execute 1 or 2 a year. We work with the city, with the Citizens Planning Institute, to get the word out to community folks. So it's also an opportunity for ULI members to volunteer as facilitators for those trainings and meet more people. And just, it's a good kind of get out of your regular day job and into the mindset of other actors in the process experience for everyone. So if you're interested, let me know. I won't talk too much, but we can do a lot of cool things with this.
And you mentioned RCOs, just for the people who aren't from
Yes,
Philadelphia.
sorry.
What is an RCO?
Sorry, registered community organization. So for those not from Philadelphia, these are community groups that can be formed in a variety of ways and have a role in essentially the land development process in Philadelphia, a sort of hyper like local neighborhood role. So these are folks that are volunteering their time to serve on this organization's, board or whatever role they play in thinking about development projects in their neighborhood. So it's really relevant, and having this group of highly engaged community residents from around the city was really fun. We also did a training for city council senior staff in July, and that was another interesting, different perspective, and heard things, like I've never looked at a project from this financial perspective or this community perspective. So it's fun. And if folks either, it's hard not knowing the full group, but are interested in this for your kind of organization or you personally, I'm happy to, I can put my information in the chat and share. This is one of many training programs we're looking at bringing to Philadelphia. Angel mentioned some other kind of more technical pro forma real estate trainings. We're also working with Jim and his organization on some possible additional real estate training programs, specifically for minority developers with Jim and Angel.
Absolutely. And that's with the Black Squirrel Group. So continue to look for other information surrounding that. Quick little plug. Jeremy, as you know, as a developer who has gone into communities, you know, and had to have these types of conversations with community groups, how do you balance out, you know, kind of your desire or your need actually to, you know, generate revenue, pay off investors and other folks, and also manage through community engagement?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult issue. It's part of, you know, the real estate business is, you know, you're often having these conversations about barriers to entry. And it's an interesting process to go through that, depending, you know, not all developers are created equal. Some of them have different missions. But you know, what I've observed is sometimes the barriers are real and structural. Sometimes they are not, and they are perceived. So, you know, one of the things, and this gets back to kind of ULI's role as a facilitator, how do we kind of bridge that gap, bring people, you know, closer to communities at the community level to really understand, you know, what's at play there. I mean, the structural issues and the practical considerations are going to be there. Well, I'm having trouble, you know, making a deal pencil out in this community because the level of investment required is too high, and I don't, you know, I can't make my returns. And unless you're willing to just turn around and say, well, I guess I just won't make my required return, which is, you know, not out of the realm of consideration, at least with some, I'm willing to, you know, take a little less and do something that, you know, has a different purpose or a multi-layered purpose, or look to make up on, you know, what I might lose, quote unquote, on this one deal. Maybe I make up in volume by being able to do more of this. So there's a question of, you know, can you scale it? And then I kind of come back to the interventions of the public and the quasi-public sector. I mean, that's why I've always been a big believer in, you know, what we've now come to call P3s before they were called that, because as much as, you know, government, you know, and business seem to not get along, and, you know, there's this kind of constant warfare that's going on between the two sectors, my belief has always been that they are inextricably linked. And when you think about, you know, government trying to create the conditions within which the marketplace can function, how do you make it work in areas where maybe the economics don't bear out a certain type of investment with traditional metrics? And, you know, the question that was asked about equitable development, part of that conversation is, are the metrics the right ones? Should we be looking at different metrics in terms of what we're trying to, you know, accomplish, not just in terms of, okay, yeah, here's the rate of return. What are we trying to accomplish in terms of improving quality of life overall in a community? And that's why it's been interesting to come into this space through the economic development world, because at the end of the day, economic development, Angel, just like you said about a creative economy, it's another one of these really amorphous terms. It means so many different things to different people. But at the end of the day, I think it's fundamentally about enhancing the quality of life through this kind of series of activities and interventions. And I think that's at the heart of equitable development. Jim, you touched on it. People who have a stake being able to be connected to what's going on, and certainly at a minimum benefit from what's going on. I think we've all seen projects where, hey, there was, you know, $50 million put in the ground right here, but 3 blocks over, it's really not benefiting anybody. And, you know, I think part of so much of this, we talk about within the ULI Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Group about this disciplined intention. And the reason why I put the word discipline in front is because you realize, with the status quo being the way it is, if you're not really, really mindful about the way you're operating, you cannot fulfill your intention to create something that's more equitable and more inclusive. Did I just miss an opportunity to properly engage the community? Did I just miss an opportunity to hire a minority contractor? Did I miss an opportunity to fashion my project in a way that would be of greater benefit to the community? I think if we all operated with that disciplined intention, and especially within the real estate industry, things would be different. And that's kind of what we talk about within the DE&I group. We don't just want to change the way things look. We actually want to change the way they work.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great segue into our next session, which is the Rebirth of S.L.I.C, Systems Change, Black Innovation in Today's America. We're going to be talking about the Black paper that was written to address a lot of the issues that Jeremy just referenced. So I encourage everybody to hang in there for the next session. I do want to thank my guests. I have the good fortune of knowing these individuals very well and have worked with them on various projects over the years, and just extremely thankful that you gave your time today to share your thoughts and your ideas, and in particular as they resonate here in Philadelphia, where we have one of the highest poverty rates in the country, and are trying to identify ways for, in particular, a city with a 46% population of Black individuals, how they can gain on the equity of that. And so again, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Angel, for being our guest today. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our host at Venture Café, Angela McQuillan, and allow for her to transition you guys into the next session. And I want to thank you all for listening. It has been my pleasure to be here for the first 45 minutes of this session. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the program.